So for me, moving to London 14 years ago is what definitely sparked the idea of the Indian single social. Because when I moved to London, I noticed that it's a very busy city, fast moving. Everyone's, running, trying to achieve their goals, whether it's through work, whether it's, in their personal lives. So it's a very busy cosmopolitan city, and people didn't necessarily have time for connection. They were reliant on things like dating apps, especially in the last 5, 6 years, right, with the rise of the dating apps. But with dating apps, I felt, and a lot of peers, a lot of people that I've met over the last few years, they felt that connections formed through dating apps are not actually that deep. They're more surface level, shallow, and as a result, they were not able to make lasting long-term connections. And that's essentially what sparked the idea of the Indian single social, because I felt, okay, if you can meet someone in person, you can already form that in-person connect, and the relationship is more likely to develop into something more meaningful and long-lasting. Yeah, so I think when I moved to the UK, what I noticed was that there are few opportunities for South Asians to connect actually in person. So, I moved here for university. So, of course, at university, there were plenty of opportunities. We had like Indian societies at the universities that I was in. So they would organize cultural events, things like Bollywood nights, Diwali celebrations, Holi celebrations, etc. So the first 4 years were great, right? Because I was a student, I did my undergrad, then I did my master's, and that was brilliant because the university and their societies organized plenty of these events. But moving into the workforce was where I really felt that these opportunities to bring the South Asian community together seem to be lacking in the city, right? Because if it's not a university that organizes it, in most cases, more often than not, people's workplaces wouldn't necessarily organize these kind of celebrations. And even if they would, right? So, I mean, I was working at a company that did organize an annual Diwali party for their employees, but that was still once a year. What about the rest of the year? If you meet someone just once a year, it's very difficult to form a lasting connection. So and again, that's the gap that I noticed was present in the market, and that's why I decided to tap into that gap, and it's working really well. So I think it's because we're not in our original cities, right? So with the third culture identity gap, you've got British South Asians sitting between two worlds. So we're Indian or we're South Asian, but we're sitting in Britain. And that hybrid identity isn't always understood by others. And essentially, we're navigating a third culture that was not fully explained to us. Today's young professionals don't necessarily engage with cultural associations the way that our parents or grandparents did, and as a result, this has resulted in fewer organic ways to actually meet people who share their background. Sure. So I think the main thing to note is that dating apps don't solve the problem of cultural connection because apps give you matches, but not a sense of belonging. When you see a profile on an app, you can't understand necessarily someone's humor, someone's values, someone's family dynamics, their food culture, their spirituality. So people today, when they're using dating apps, they feel culturally misunderstood or maybe even forced to over explain themselves to the person that they've matched with. And so as I said, dating apps can match you with someone, but they can't give you that sense of community. So when it comes to a dating event, you're meeting someone in person, you're sharing a laugh so you can understand their sense of humor. You've chatted with them for a couple of hours, so you get a good sense of what their value system is. And you can have conversations about things they enjoy doing, their family, their upbringing, what it's like, what prompted their move to London, for example, and you really get to form a deeper connection with that person in person. So I think that's the main thing that I'm trying to solve when it comes to the events. Is it's not just about giving you a match, but it's actually giving you that sense of community, which you can form in person. I think it does, simply because with the whole, rise of the dating apps today, what's happened is people seem to think there's always a next best thing, right? So they just feel, okay, the next person is just a swipe away. So they may not want to actually commit to a person that they've matched with because they feel they may get someone better. And this is actually a huge problem that we're seeing in this generation because people are taking longer to settle down. Because they always feel they can get someone better, and it's really shifted the dynamics in the dating world today, where it's difficult to win because you're always looking out for the next best thing. So I think again with what I mentioned earlier, right, where people are sort of almost navigating two different identities because they're Indian at heart, but they actually live in the UK. So they're caught between two different cultures, two different worlds. When I host events with that Indian cultural theme in the event, that actually brings people back to home. So, things like our Bollywood nights, as you mentioned, our Bollywood brunches or our Desi sip and paint nights, you've got Bollywood music, you've got Indian food, you've done cultural celebrations like for Diwali, for example, for Holi. So this really helps people feel that sense of belonging, especially at Diwali event, for example. We did it up really nicely with lots of diyas, crackers, etc. So people really felt like they were back in India and they were celebrating with loved ones. Even though these were new people that they were meeting at the events, they formed those deeper connections because they were engaging with them in a way that makes them feel at home. So when it comes to shared identity, right, the most prominent thing I would say is actually by attending these events, you get to feel like you're part of a community. And what started to happen is, so we do these events at least thrice a month, if not more. So essentially, every weekend there's some sort of event happening in London for Indian singles. So it's very often a lot of the same people that come to these events. Of course, you've got loads of different people that show up every week as well, but a lot of people do tend to come every week or at least once a month. So then you see familiar faces. And when you go to an event and you start to recognize people at that event and you say, oh yes, I've met you at this previous event last month or this previous event, 2 months ago, it really builds a sense of community. So it's not just that people are meeting once and then never meeting again. People meet, they actually exchange numbers. They then have made their own mini WhatsApp groups from certain events. Like I recently had a paddle event, and there was, everyone there obviously loved paddle. So they formed their own little paddle WhatsApp group, and now they play paddle, I think, once a week together. So they form their own mini communities within the wider community that we provide. Oh, that's a very good question. I think nostalgia is kind of at the heart of everything we do. So even when it comes to, for example, hosting an event, whether it's a chai and paint event or a run and chai event, just, we send people off for a run. We've got guided fitness instructors that would be leading the run, for example. But then we all come back to a cafe and everyone's given a warm cup of chai afterwards. So that really brings that sense of nostalgia, because just having that warm cup of chai on a cold winter morning makes them, remember their days back home. So that's why we try to sort of put in elements of food and culture and decor that can help invoke that sense of nostalgia in them. And whenever you feel close to home through the nostalgia, that's when you are able to form deeper connections. So I think it was in the first year itself. It was honestly after the first event when I realized that, okay, there's a real need for this. And people just want that sense of belonging, because when I noticed people try to connect with other people after that first event, and when they turned up to the second event, and when I saw that even a year later, you see people still coming back, that's made me feel like they're not only here for dating, they're also here just to make friends and to have that sense of community. Because as I mentioned, for me, I moved to London for university. So I was very lucky to meet a lot of like-minded people at university, again, through university societies, clubs, etc. But for people who move here in their professional life, there aren't that many opportunities for them to connect with people of the same culture. So this is almost a cultural group, because it's giving people a place to come to every weekend for some sort of activity and to meet like-minded people and hopefully find love, but definitely find friends. I think the biggest change is, obviously forming those connections. So people definitely did form those deeper connections. And I think the community got a lot closer. So though it's become a larger community, it's actually become a lot more close knit, because as I mentioned, people now have their own subgroups within the community. They form their own set of friends. And I think seeing that play out has been really, really nice and really rewarding for me as the founder, because I'm really seeing the fruits of my labor now. All the hard work and effort I've put in is finally paying off, because we're seeing success stories. We're seeing, whether it's friendships, relationships, weddings, etc. We're getting to see those success stories. That is a tough one. And I think, but that's something that I've worked really hard to make sure that every event that we hold still has that sense of intimacy and authenticity. And the way I do it is, if I'm hosting 3 events a month, for example, one will typically be a big event, right? So that will have anywhere between 100 and 150 people. We host curated icebreakers to make sure that that event is held in a way that people can actually form those connections, but in a wider group, right? In a big group setting. I also host then a second event a month, which would be a smaller group. So that would be maybe 50 people. The icebreakers change when it's 150 people and when it's 50 people, right? Because you just can't throw the same kind of icebreakers in such a large group and in a sort of mid-sized group and expect people to connect. So we have to alter the icebreakers. And then a third event a month is usually an activity. So that could be like 20 to 30 people. It could be, going to play badminton, playing paddle, our sip and paint events. So the activities, then that's the icebreaker in our sort of smaller setting events. So I think from my perspective as a founder, I make sure that every month there's at least one large event, one mid-sized event, and one small event, so that when people from my community want to join something, they can pick the event that suits their personality more. So you often see more extroverted people attending the larger events, and you will see the more introverted people attending the smaller events because they just feel more comfortable in that setting. But at the same time, our icebreakers are designed for both extroverts and introverts to make sure that people feel comfortable at the event. I think, finding the right venues that suit the personality of the crowd, and obviously tying all the logistics together is not easy. We deal with, caterers, DJs, other vendors, decor companies, the actual venue. So, but I've been really lucky that everyone I've worked with has been really, really great. The people the venues I've worked with, you can tell that they're so passionate about really giving a good experience to their guests. And it's the same with the DJs, for example. I've worked with caterers. I've picked people that are so passionate about what they do that the events it automatically transpires into the events, right? And I think it's about identifying the right people to work with. That's the hardest part, but I feel like I've got there now, almost 3 years later. I mean, I think one of the most meaningful success stories for me is a couple that met at my first ever event. And that stories really stay close to heart, because she apparently she wasn't planning to come to the event. She decided to come to the event very last minute with a push from one of her friends. And she met this guy there, and they've been dating for almost 3 years now, because the first event was in April 2023. So we're nearing, so 2.5, 3 years now. They're actually doing long distance at the moment, but it's going really well. So that's probably the fact that someone formed a connection so strong that even distance wasn't enough to break them apart. That to me was probably the most heartwarming story that I've heard. Oh, definitely. So friendships are basically formed at every single event. That's sort of a given. You will definitely, when you enter an event, you're meeting, whether it's 30, 50, or 150 people, you're meeting so many people in that room that are like-minded to you, that share the same values as you, right? So friendships are only inevitable. Love stories, obviously, that takes a bit of luck. It's timing and it's being in the right room. So again, we provide the room for that to happen. But friendships are pretty much guaranteed. It happens all the time. And as I mentioned, people have formed their own little WhatsApp groups now, where they sort of connect every weekend, whether it's going for a brunch, a dinner, a movie, playing a sport together. I've seen a lot of this, and I've also been added to a lot of these groups by the attendees that I've met. So it's really nice. It's nice for me to connect with my own community outside of the event as well, and really form deeper connections with them too. Definitely, because I think when young South Asians are living in countries that they're from, in their hometowns, right, back in India or wherever they're from, there's so many family gatherings that they go to. They spend a lot of times meeting their relatives, attending cultural events. And I think moving abroad, that sense of community and cultural identity is really lost, or it can be lost. And I think what we've done is through our events, we've actually helped invoke that sense of cultural belonging back. And I've definitely seen people, feel a lot more comfortable, feel just happier in London because they now have a lot more people to share these amazing moments of life with, right? Whether it's celebrating Diwali, whether it's celebrating a birthday, they now have more people to do it with. Yeah. So, in my opinion, belonging for a South Asian who's living abroad looks like, as I mentioned previously, having someone to share these happy and sad moments of life with, right? Because not everything goes according to plan in your life. And if you've got someone whose shoulder you can cry on in your not so happy moments, but equally, you've got someone that you can celebrate your happiest moments with, that's when you feel like you belong in that community, right? And I think what we've done is we've helped build that sense of belonging, build that sense of community, and we've really given people their lifelong friends through the community. And that's honestly probably the most heartwarming thing for me. Got
I
it.
get it.
Got it. So, I mean, as you mentioned, heritage could be the smell of chai. It could be Bollywood songs in the background. It could be celebrating these festivals like Diwali, Holi, etc. It could be hearing familiar languages, familiar accents. All of these things anchor emotional identity, and it makes people feel like they're at home, right? And in turn, this would then influence how people date, relate to one another, and form relationships. I think when you have that sense of heritage, that affects your ideas of partnership, your communication styles, your expectations around family roles, long term values. And this is exactly why culturally aligned dating feels a lot more intuitive for many people, because heritage shapes the way we love, not just the way we live. So I think young South Asians in the UK are really craving that sense of connection and that sense of belonging. So they want to stay connected to tradition. They want to be able to navigate, the challenges of living abroad and away from their family. But at the same time, they want to be able to shape a hybrid identity of being Indian or South Asian, but still living abroad. And they also want to be able to balance their family expectations with their personal autonomy. And when we invoke that sense of heritage in our events, that actually helps diaspora communities stitch these two cultures into one life, right? Because at the end of the day, um, all people are looking for is, or at least all that South Asians are looking for, is a sense of belonging, values, and roots. And I think when people have that sense of belonging, that's really the almost like an invisible language that guides how we see the world and how we find each other. So the biggest misconception people had about the community was that we do speed dating and it's going to be awkward and they're going to be sat in front of someone that they don't want to talk to and forced to talk to them for 2 minutes. That's not true at all. We don't do any of that. We've actually never hosted a speed dating event in that essence. All of our events have really cool icebreakers. So we may give people a card when they enter, and say, okay, give this to someone you find hot. It's obviously this is something lighthearted, funny that we do. But yeah, so we don't really do traditional speed dating. Our events are a lot more fun. We do tailored icebreakers, custom made to people as well. So we also sometimes collect information about our attendees before the event, and then the icebreaker would use that information to help people break the ice and get to know one another. So it's the more personalized icebreakers that we host. And yeah, once people started coming, once they saw the Instagram reels go up and go viral, that's when they started to feel more comfortable and understand that, okay, this is not typical or traditional speed dating. It's actually a lot more than that, and it's a lot better than that. People also are given the opportunity to connect in a way that feels intuitive and comfortable for them. So at every event, I'm usually always present, and I always make sure that I go around and I talk to everyone. I make them feel warm and welcome, whether it's giving them a hug when they enter, or just making sure that I've taken out 5 minutes at the event to go and talk to every individual. So that's what I do to give everyone that sense of belonging, and to tell them that I value them being there, on the night. And when I do that, it really helps add a personal touch to the event, and people really feel warm, they feel welcome. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what's been working. That's what I do. And everyone has given me a good response. So, and I think that something's working when you see the same faces coming back and back again, right? So you know that you have made an impact in their life. They enjoy being in your presence, and that's why they're coming back. So I believe that anywhere where there's a strong South Asian community, there's possibility for connection, and there's possibility to bring people together so that they can form those deeper connections. So that's why Dubai is a natural next step. New York is a natural next step as well, because these cities hold a massive South Asian population, and it's not in India. So people are looking for that connection and to feel like they're back home. So yeah, I feel like these would be great next steps to be expanding into.